I woke up on the break room floor with a needle in my arm and a photo of my husband smiling under a picnic blanket with his best friend staring back at me. I thought he was just callous until the nurse whispered that she had signed the discharge papers for me. I did not scream. I remained silent. Some betrayals only need exactly one recording to bury two people alive. My name is Lauren Hayes. I am 34 years old, and until this morning, I was the senior project manager at Crestwell Analytics in Tampa. The day began like a sprint through deep water. My coffee had turned into cold sludge on my desk before 9 in the morning, ignored in favor of an inbox that seemed to refill itself every time I blinked. My heart was doing a strange, fluttering dance against my ribs, a chaotic rhythm that I chalked up to the triple shot of espresso and the looming quarterly review. I told myself I just needed to push through the fatigue. I was gunning for the director position. The promotion was dangling right in front of me, promising a salary bump that would finally let Grant and me look at buying a vacation home, or maybe just paying off the rest of his student loans. I skipped lunch. I ignored the gnawing hollowness in my stomach and the tremor in my hands as I grabbed my laptop and marched toward the glass-walled conference room for the third consecutive meeting of the day. The room was air-conditioned to a near-Arctic chill, but I was sweating. I stood up to present the quarterly projections, forcing a smile that felt too tight on my face. The spreadsheet on the screen blurred. The rows of numbers started to swim together like oil on water. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table, my knuckles turning white. "Lauren, are you with us?" I tried to answer. I tried to say that I was fine, just a little lightheaded. Instead, the floor rushed up to meet me. I felt the impact in my shoulder first, then the side of my head. The sound of chairs scraping violently against the floorboards echoed in my ears. "Oh my God, she's down! Call 911! Someone get her husband on the line! Does anyone have Grant's number?" The voices sounded underwater. The last thing I registered was the frantic face of my assistant hovering over me before the world dissolved into black static. When I opened my eyes, the harsh, fluorescent lights of the emergency room stung my retinas. The air smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. I was in a hospital gown, and there was a steady, rhythmic beeping coming from the monitor beside me. My head throbbed. I fumbled for my phone on the bedside table. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. 8 missed calls from my assistant, 3 texts from HR asking for an incident report, 0 missed calls from Grant. I opened our message thread. I had sent him an automated emergency SOS when I fell, a feature I had set up years ago and forgot about. He had replied 20 minutes ago. "I am busy right now. Babe, you can handle it. I am at a picnic with Brooke for a bit." It was followed by a single emoji, a smiling face with a bead of sweat. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the glass. I tried to rationalize it. Grant had always been squeamish about hospitals. He fainted once just visiting his mother after her knee surgery. And Brooke was his best friend from college. They had known each other for over a decade. It was innocent. He was just being a typical, oblivious man who did not understand the gravity of the situation. He probably thought I had just tripped or felt dizzy. He did not know I had collapsed in front of the entire executive board. A doctor in a white coat slid the curtain aside. He looked tired. "Mrs. Hayes, I am Dr. Evans. You gave us quite a scare." "What? What happened?" I asked, my voice rasping. "Exhaustion, dehydration, and a mild cardiac arrhythmia, likely stress-induced. We have stabilized your fluids, but I want to keep you for observation for a few hours. We need a family member to sign some release forms and liability waivers for the monitoring equipment if you want to go home tonight." I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3 in the afternoon. 3 hours since I hit the floor at Crestwell. My phone felt heavy in my hand. I looked at Grant's text again. Picnic. "Is your husband on his way?" the doctor asked gently. "He is busy," I said. The lie tasted like copper in my mouth. The doctor gave me a sympathetic look, the kind you give to a child who dropped their ice cream cone. I turned my head away. It took 3 hours to drive from the city to the beach, have a picnic, and drive back. Or maybe they were at the park just 10 minutes away. I realized something then, a cold clarity that cut through the dizziness. No one is that busy. No one ignores a message that their wife has collapsed at work unless they have a reason to not care. The denial I was building started to crack. My husband was not just oblivious. He was absent, and he was absent because he was with her. The plastic clipboard hit the metal counter with a sharp clack that made me jump. A nurse I had not seen before bustled into the room, scanning a document with a furrowed brow. She did not look up at me immediately. She just uncapped a pen and tapped the paper. Mrs. Hayes, just for our records, the individual who authorized the initial treatment and signed the release waiver is Brooke Calder. Is that correct? The room seemed to tilt on its axis. The air left my lungs in a sudden rush. Excuse me, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Who did you say signed for me? The nurse finally looked up, her expression mild and unconcerned. Brooke Calder. She identified herself as your primary emergency contact and family representative. She handled the admission paperwork while you were sedated. I sat up, ignoring the way the sensors tugged at my skin. Let me see that. I did not wait for permission. I snatched the clipboard from her hands. My eyes scanned the intake form. There, in the box labeled emergency contact. The name Martha Hayes, my mother, was gone. In its place, printed in block letters, was Brooke Calder. Next to it was a phone number I did not recognize. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. Last Tuesday night, I had been drowning in spreadsheets for the Crestwell merger. Grant had walked in with a glass of wine, smiling that easy, charming smile. He had offered to handle the annual HR update forms for me. I am already logged into the portal. Babe, he had said, let me take this off your plate. You focus on the presentation. I had kissed him. I had thanked him for being so supportive. I grabbed my phone from the bedside table. My fingers shook as I dialed Grant. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I hung up and typed a message, my thumbs hitting the glass hard. Where are you? Why is Brooke listed as my emergency contact? Who gave her permission to sign anything I watched the screen? The status changed to read almost instantly. I waited for the 3 dancing dots that would indicate he was typing a reply. They never appeared. He had seen it, and he had chosen silence. A soft knock on the door frame broke my trance. It was Sarah, a junior analyst from my team. She looked pale, clutching her purse like a shield. Lauren, I just wanted to check on you. The paramedic said, I am fine. Sarah. I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. I am fine. She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was barely audible over the hum of the air conditioner. I do not know if I should mention this, but I saw her, Brooke. Where? At the office. This morning. Before the meeting started, Sarah looked over her shoulder at the open door. She wasn't just visiting. She went into the CFO's office with the HR director. They closed the blinds. A cold dread settled in my stomach. It was different from the panic of the collapse. This was not the fear of dying. It was the fear of being erased. This was not a medical emergency. It was a choreographed event. I need to get out of here, I said. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. The nurse tried to protest, but I waved her off. I walked to the nursing station, my legs feeling like lead. I want to see the security footage from the waiting room, I demanded. Ma'am, we cannot just show you surveillance tapes, the head nurse said, looking alarmed. That requires a subpoena. My eyes dropped to the counter. The visitor logbook was open. It was a physical book, old-fashioned and reliable. I traced the lines with my finger until I found today's date. There it was, written in blue ink. Visitor Brooke Calder, time in 1:15 in the afternoon. I looked at the clock. It was now 4:30. Grant had texted me that they were at a picnic. He had sent an emoji of a smiling face, but Brooke had not been at a park. She had been here, standing in this hospital, signing her name on the line that belonged to my family. She had not just visited. She had stepped into my shoes the moment I fell out of them. I realized then that the picnic was just a surface lie. The reality was much worse. They were not just having an affair. They were establishing a paper trail, and Brooke Calder had already begun the process of becoming Mrs. Hayes in every way that mattered on paper. I dialed Tessa Monroe. She was an ICU nurse at a different hospital across town, a woman built of steel and skepticism who had never liked Grant. If anyone could cut through the red tape and tell me what was actually happening, it was her. She picked up on the second ring. "Lauren, I heard you were at St. Jude's. Are you okay?" "I am alive," I said, keeping my voice low so the nurses outside would not hear. "But something is wrong, not with my heart. With the paperwork. Can you access the shared network I need to know what was filed under my admission?" There was a pause, followed by the rapid clicking of a keyboard. "Give me a second." "Okay. I am looking at the upload log. Lauren, there is a temporary administrative power of attorney here. It was uploaded 20 minutes after you were admitted. I never signed a power of attorney," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "It is signed," Tessa said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "but the signature looks shaky, like someone guided your hand, or traced it." A memory flashed in my mind, sharp and sickening. I was on the floor in the conference room. My vision was tunneling, gray at the edges. I remembered a hand reaching into my pocket. I remembered the cool glass of my phone screen being pressed against my face. At the time, I thought someone was trying to call for help using my contacts. Now, the realization made my skin crawl. They had not been calling for help. They had used my Face ID to unlock my digital life while I was too weak to stop them. I need to go. "Tessa, I have to check something." I hung up and immediately opened my cloud storage app. My fingers flew across the screen, checking the sent folder in my work email. Nothing there. I checked the trash. There it was. A PDF file titled LOA Request, Hayes. PDF. Created exactly 2 hours ago. I opened the document. It was a formal letter addressed to the head of HR. "Due to a recurring medical condition that renders me unable to fulfill my duties, I, Lauren Hayes, am requesting an immediate medical leave of absence." I read the words again. Recurring medical condition. I did not have a recurring condition. I had fainted once from exhaustion, but the phrasing was specific. It was legal armor. It was the kind of language used to protect a company from liability before they sever ties with a problematic employee. It sounded nothing like me. It sounded exactly like the HR handbook. I switched to my messages and texted the HR director, expecting a frantic check-in. "I am awake. I did not authorize any leave request. Please disregard the email sent from my account." The reply came 3 minutes later. It was chillingly professional. "Hi, Lauren. We are just glad you are safe. Let's not worry about work right now. We can have a formal meeting to discuss your capacity when you are stable." When I am stable, they were already treating the narrative as fact. I was the unstable element. The doctor returned then, holding a small device with wires attached. "Mrs. Hayes, we are going to discharge you, but you need to wear this Holter monitor for 72 hours. It will record your heart rhythm. If there are any irregularities, we will know." "I will wear it," I said. As he attached the leads to my chest, my mind began to race, connecting dots I had been too blind to see. Who benefited if I was labeled unstable? Who benefited if I was removed from the office for a month or two? I thought about the Phoenix Project. It was the biggest contract in the history of Crestwell Analytics. It involved a massive data set of client consumer behavior and a proposal that I had spent 6 months building. The final presentation was next week. If I was out on medical leave, someone else would have to present it. Someone else would get the credit for the $1 million contract. Last week, the CEO had brought in a freelance consultant to help streamline the data, a consultant named Brooke. The pieces slammed together. Brooke was not just Grant's college friend. She was not just the woman picnicking with my husband while I was in the hospital. She was the failsafe. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Is something wrong?" the doctor asked, pausing with a sticker in his hand. "No," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had never felt before. "No." I just realized something. It was a coup, a perfectly executed two-front war. Grant was liquidating our personal assets while I was distracted, and Brooke was stealing my career while I was incapacitated. They had used my collapse not as a tragedy, but as a tactical opening. She was stepping into my marriage and my office simultaneously. I looked at the doctor. "I am ready to go home now. I have a lot of work to do." Grant finally walked through the door at 6 in the evening. He was not running. He was not out of breath. He was not holding flowers. He strolled in with the casual annoyance of someone who had been inconvenienced by traffic, not a husband rushing to the bedside of his collapsed wife. He stopped at the foot of the bed and sighed, looking at the monitor before looking at me. "You are making a huge deal out of this," he said, shaking his head. "I just asked Brooke to help because I was tied up. You were unconscious. Lauren, someone had to take charge." I watched him carefully. I observed him the way I observed data trends at work, looking for anomalies. He did not ask the doctor for a diagnosis. He did not ask the nurse about my heart rate. He did not ask me how I felt. "Did you sign the leave papers yet?" he asked. HR needs them to process the insurance claim. It was a checklist. He was ticking boxes. Secure the wife. Secure the signature. Secure the money. I decided then that I would not scream. I would not demand to know why Brooke's name was on my charts. If they were writing a script for a hysterical, unstable woman, I would not give them the performance they expected. I let my shoulders slump. I made my voice sound small and fragile. "Are you worried about me, Grant?" I asked. "Of course," he replied instantly. It was a reflex, mechanical and hollow. His eyes were already drifting back to the phone in his hand. My phone buzzed on the tray table. It was a notification from our group chat, The Inner Circle. A photo popped up. It was a generic, high-resolution image of a gourmet fruit basket. OMG, so scary. Sending love and vitamins. Get well soon. It was from Brooke. It was perfect. It was the kind of public display of affection designed to make her look like a saint and make any suspicion I had look like ingratitude. "I want to go home," I said. "Maybe you should stay," Grant said, but his tone lacked conviction. The doctor said I can monitor from home." I interrupted softly. "I just want to be in my own bed." I signed the discharge papers. I did not sign the leave of absence. I folded the copy of the forged medical authorization and tucked it deep inside my purse. The car ride home was a study in gaslighting. Grant drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift, just out of reach of my hand. He started talking about the picnic. He described the sandwiches. He talked about how nice the weather was by the lake. He was normalizing it. He was trying to overwrite the reality of my collapse with the banality of his afternoon, forcing me to accept that his leisure was as important as my emergency. I sat in silence, memorizing every word. Every lie was a brick I would use to build his prison later. When we got home, the house felt different. It felt like a territory I was losing. I walked into the study to put my discharge papers in the family filing cabinet where we kept our tax returns and deeds. I spun the combination lock to our anniversary date. The latch did not open. I tried again. Nothing. "Oh," Grant said from the doorway. He was leaning against the frame, watching me. "I changed the code yesterday. With everything going on, I thought we needed better security. Security from whom I asked. Just, generally," he said, shrugging. "Do not worry about it. Go rest." He did not give me the new code. I walked into the master bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the faucet to drown out any sound. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale, and there were dark circles under my eyes, but the fear was gone. The woman looking back at me was no longer a wife. She was a project manager who had just discovered a critical failure in the system. I realized I was not going to save this marriage. There was nothing left to save. Grant had locked me out of the files, out of the finances, and out of the truth. I took a deep breath, steadying the rhythm of my heart. I was going to save my life. And to do that, I had to stop being his wife and start being his enemy. I waited until the digital clock on the nightstand read 2 in the morning. Grant was asleep, his breathing heavy and rhythmic, the sound of a man with absolutely no conscience. I slid out from under the duvet, grabbing my personal laptop, not the tablet he had access to, but my old MacBook, and crept into the guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. I sat on the cold tile floor and logged into our joint bank account. My hands were shaking, not from the heart condition they were trying to pin on me, but from adrenaline. I scrolled through the transaction history. At first glance, it looked normal: mortgage, utilities, groceries. Then I saw it, a transfer of $4,000 to something called Caldwell Consulting, LLC. I scrolled back another month, $3,000, another month back, $5,000. I opened a new tab and searched the state business registry. Caldwell Consulting, LLC was formed 5 months ago. The registered agent was Grant Hayes. The business address was a post office box in a strip mall 3 towns over. There was no website. There were no services. It was a black hole where my salary was disappearing. I went back to the bank portal. There was a recurring transfer I had never authorized, funneling money into a sub-account labeled Goal Savings. I clicked to view the details. The account was restricted. I could see the money going in, but I could not see where it was going out. They were draining us dry, dollar by dollar. I felt sick, but I forced myself to open my work email next. I needed to see if the rot had spread to my benefits package. I searched for notifications from the insurance provider. I found an email from last week, unopened, buried in my spam folder. Subject: confirmation of beneficiary change. I opened the attachment. My breath hitched in my throat. The primary beneficiary on my life insurance policy had been confirmed as Grant Hayes. That was standard. But there was a new addition. Secondary beneficiary, designated caregiver Brooke Calder. I stared at the screen. They were trying to leverage the house. I showed the screen to Grant when he came back inside. I did not authorize this. I said, "Oh, that." He waved a hand dismissively, not even looking at the screen. Probably a glitch, or maybe identity theft. I will call the bank later. Do not stress yourself out. He was not going to call the bank. He had made the call. I went into the bathroom and locked the door, leaning against the sink. The urgency made sense now. The deadline from HR, the pressure to sign, the sudden financial moves. They were racing against the clock. They needed me declared incompetent, and the money moved before I had the strength to fight back. I opened my work calendar on my phone, scrolling past the current week. I stopped at Saturday. There was an event scheduled that I had forgotten about in the chaos. Crestwell Analytics Town Hall, keynote speaker Brooke Calder. I tapped on the event details. The agenda had been updated just this morning. The CEO was scheduled to announce a strategic restructuring of the data projects team immediately following Brooke's speech. The realization hit me like a physical shove. Brooke was not just filling in. She was the restructuring. They were going to announce her as the new lead on my project this weekend. If I signed that leave paper today, I would be handing them the keys to my office just in time for them to lock me out forever. The notification from Human Resources arrived at 8:30 in the morning. It was flagged as high priority, the subject line gleaming in red on my phone screen. They were attaching a revised long-term disability agreement and a voluntary leave of absence form for my health protection. The email stated in bold, cheerful font that they needed the signed documents returned by 5 o'clock that afternoon to process the payroll adjustments for the current cycle. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the PDF on my tablet, When Grant placed a steaming mug of chamomile tea in front of me, he smelled of expensive cologne and deception. "Here you go, babe," he said, his voice dripping with solicitous concern. He slid a ballpoint pen across the granite countertop until it rested right next to my hand. "I think you should just sign it. You need the rest. Get it over with so it is off your mind." I picked up the tea, blowing on the steam to buy myself a few seconds. "I do not know. Grant, the language in Section 4 seems restrictive. I want to read the fine print before I agree to indefinite leave." For a split second, the mask slipped, his jaw tightened, and a flash of pure, unfiltered irritation crossed his eyes. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by that terrifyingly smooth smile. "I am just thinking of you, Lauren," he said, patting my shoulder a little too hard. "But sure, read it. Just do not miss the deadline." An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Brooke. She breezed in carrying a casserole dish covered in foil, looking effortlessly chic in a tailored blazer that cost more than my monthly car payment. "I brought lunch," she announced, setting the dish down. "How is the heart monitor? Is it uncomfortable?" "It is fine," I said, watching her. Her eyes did not stay on me. They darted to the hallway leading to the home office. They lingered on the keypad of the wall safe. She was casing the joint. She sat down opposite me, leaning forward with a conspiratorial air. "You know, Lauren," she started, her voice lowering. "If you are worried about the Phoenix project, do not be. If you need someone to step in temporarily at Crestwell, I could probably take it on. I mean, I am already familiar with the data." The air in the room seemed to freeze. I looked at her. "How are you familiar with my data?" "Brooke, that is confidential client information." She blinked, realizing she had overstepped. "Oh, just from what Grant has mentioned. About how hard you work." She laughed, but it sounded brittle. Later that afternoon, I saw them on the back porch through the kitchen window. Grant was pacing, running a hand through his hair. Brooke was whispering something to him, her face intense. I opened the sliding door. "Cannot wait until Monday. We need to Grant cut himself off the moment he heard the latch click." They both turned to me, their expressions resetting instantly to casual pleasantness. "Just asking Brooke for a recommendation on lawn care." Grant lied. "You should be resting. Honey." I retreated inside, my heart pounding against the plastic monitor taped to my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text alert from our bank. "Credit inquiry. A request for a new home equity line of credit has been initiated." I stared at the screen. They were trying to leverage the house. I showed the screen to Grant when he came back inside. "I did not authorize this," I said. "Oh," that he waved a hand dismissively, not even looking at the screen. Probably a glitch, or maybe identity theft. "I will call the bank later. Do not stress yourself out." He was not going to call the bank. He had made the call. I went into the bathroom and locked the door, leaning against the sink. The urgency made sense now. The deadline from HR, the pressure to sign, the sudden financial moves, they were racing against the clock. They needed me declared incompetent, and the money moved before I had the strength to fight back. I opened my work calendar on my phone, scrolling past the current week. I stopped at Saturday. There was an event scheduled that I had forgotten about in the chaos. Crestwell Analytics Town Hall, keynote speaker Brooke Calder. I tapped on the event details. The agenda had been updated just this morning. The CEO was scheduled to announce a strategic restructuring of the data projects team immediately following Brooke's speech. The realization hit me like a physical shove. Brooke was not just filling in. She was the restructuring. They were going to announce her as the new lead on my project this weekend. If I signed that leave paper today, I would be handing them the keys to my office just in time for them to lock me out forever. I slipped out of the house while Grant was in the shower, telling him through the bathroom door that I needed to make a quick run to the pharmacy for my heart medication. Instead, I drove to a dimly lit diner on the edge of town to meet Marcus Reed. Marcus was the chief compliance officer at Crestwell Analytics, a man who wore suits that cost more than my car and possessed a reputation for destroying careers over a single misplaced decimal point. He hated sloppiness, and he hated liars. I slid into the booth opposite him. He did not say hello. He simply slid a manila envelope across the sticky table. "You look terrible, Lauren," Marcus said, his voice devoid of sympathy. "But this file looks worse. We received an anonymous complaint yesterday morning. It claims you are mentally unstable and pose a significant security risk to the client data. It was accompanied by this." He tapped a printout of an email. It was the leave request I had found in my sent folder. "I did not send that," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It came from your account," Marcus countered, "and the IP address logs show it was sent from your home network. Look at the timestamp." "Marcus," I urged him, 2:15 in the afternoon on Tuesday. "Where was I at 2:15? Marcus frowned, checking the time. "I was in the emergency room at St. Jude's," I said. "I was unconscious. I have the hospital admission records to prove it. Someone logged into my account from my house while I was hooked up to an IV across town." Marcus went still. He was a creature of logic, and I had just given him a variable that did not fit the equation. He pulled the paper back and studied it. "If you did not send this, then someone is trying to force you out," he said slowly. "And I think I know why. Brooke Calder is not just covering for you. She has been bypassing protocol. She is pitching a proprietary consulting solution directly to our biggest clients. She is telling them that if the current project lead, you cannot finish the job due to health issues, she can step in and migrate their data to her private server for safekeeping." The realization hit me so hard I felt the breath leave my lungs. "It is a double heist," I whispered. "Grant is liquidating our personal assets, and Brooke is stealing my professional portfolio. They are using my collapse as the distraction to rob me blind on both fronts." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "I do not like being used as a pawn in a domestic dispute, and I certainly do not like consultants stealing our intellectual property. If you want to stop this, I can help you. But you have to play it my way. What do you have in mind?" I asked. "We set a trap," Marcus said. "A honey file. I will have IT plant a specific file in the project folder. It will look like the master key to the client data. If anyone accesses it without the proper biometrics, the system will silently lock down. Log the user ID, timestamp the breach, and create a forensic copy of the session. We will catch them red-handed." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "But do not trigger the alarm immediately. I need them to feel safe. I need them to commit fully." Marcus nodded, a small, predatory smile touching his lips. "Agreed. But you are cutting it close. Lauren," I checked the executive calendar. "Brooke has a private meeting with the CFO tomorrow afternoon. She is going to request high-level administrative access to the project. She is going to try to legitimize the theft." I realized. "Exactly," Marcus said. "She wants the keys to the castle, and if she gets them before the town hall this weekend, she will walk onto that stage and announce herself as the savior of the project. Once she does that publicly, removing her becomes a PR nightmare." I stood up, gripping my purse strap. The town hall was the finish line. If Brooke walked off that stage with the access codes, I would lose everything. But if she walked into the trap Marcus was setting, she would lose her career and Grant would lose his freedom. "Let her have the meeting," I said, my voice sharp as a knife. "Let her think she has won." "I will see you at the town hall. Be careful." "Lauren," Marcus warned as I walked away. "If they are desperate enough to forge medical records, they are desperate enough to do worse. I am counting on it," I said. I played the part of the fading flower perfectly. On Friday evening, I slumped into the armchair in the living room, clutching a blanket around my shoulders as if I were perpetually cold. Grant was hovering, the leave of absence form in his hand like a weapon he was dying to use. "I will sign it, Grant," I said. letting my voice crack just enough to sound defeated. But I cannot do it here. I want to go to the town hall tomorrow. I want to sign it there. Sort of like a goodbye to my career. For closure, Grant breathed out, a long exhale that sounded like steam escaping a pressure valve. He looked at Brooke, who was sitting on our sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and flashed a smile that did not reach her eyes. That is a sweet idea. Lauren. Brooke cooed. It will be good for you to say goodbye properly. And hey, after the town hall, we can all go for another picnic just like old times. To cheer you up, I forced a weak nod. That sounds nice. The moment they turned away, I texted Dana Klein. My instructions were precise. I needed the divorce petition, the motion to freeze our assets, and the formal fraud notification for the bank ready. We were not mailing them. Dana was going to hand-deliver them to the conference room the moment the trap snapped shut. Everything is ready on my end, Dana replied. Just give the signal. I then messaged Marcus. Is the system primed? The honey file is live. Marcus responded. Anyone who opens the Phoenix Project folder without your biometric key will trigger a silent lockdown. We are logging every keystroke. That night, I activated the voice recorder app on my phone and slipped it into my pocket. I walked into the kitchen where Grant was pouring himself a drink. He looked agitated, pacing back and forth. Are you sure you are up for tomorrow? He asked, taking a large gulp of whiskey. You know, maybe you should just sign now and stay home. Brooke can announce your resignation for you. I need to be there. Grant, I said softly. Unless you think I am not capable. He spun around, frustration leaking through his facade. It is not about capability. Lauren, it is about logistics. Just sign the damn paper. If you act like this, if you are unstable, the paperwork is actually easier to process if you are not there to fight it. Let Brooke handle it. She knows what she is doing. I felt the phone vibrate against my hip. He had just admitted that my alleged instability was a tool for them to expedite the process. I will think about it, I stammered, backing away. As I retreated to the bedroom, my phone pinged with a message from Brooke. Don't worry, sweetie. I will step in for you temporarily. Grant agrees it is for the best. You just rest. Temporarily, the word hung there like a guillotine blade. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened Grant's laptop, which he had carelessly left logged in on the dresser. I checked his calendar to see what time we needed to leave for the town hall. My eyes scanned past the event and landed on a reminder set for Monday morning. Appointment, Dr. Eris. Competency evaluation for L. Hayes. I froze. Dr. Eris was a geriatric psychiatrist known for signing off on power of attorney transfers for dementia patients. Grant was not just trying to steal my money. He was planning to have me declared legally incompetent. He was going to put me in a conservatorship so he could control every decision I made for the rest of my life. I closed the laptop gently. The fear evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I looked at the dress I had laid out for the town hall. It was simple, black and sharp. It was not the dress of a sick woman. It was the dress of an executioner. I realized then that tomorrow was not going to be my resignation. It was going to be an ambush. Brooke thought she was walking onto that stage to claim my job. Grant thought he was walking in to claim my life insurance. But they were both walking into a slaughterhouse, and I was the one holding the knife. Okay, I whispered to the empty room. Let's go to a picnic. The auditorium at Crestwell Analytics was humming with the low, nervous energy of 500 employees wondering who was about to be fired. I walked in wearing a simple black dress, sharp enough to command respect, but modest enough to play the part of the recovering invalid. I chose a seat in the back row, far away from the spotlight. Grant walked beside me, but there was a distinct ocean of space between us. He did not offer me his arm. He did not ask if I needed water. His eyes were fixed on the stage, darting toward the wings where Brooke was waiting. He checked his watch every 30 seconds, his leg bouncing with a manic rhythm. He looked like a man waiting for a getaway car. The lights dimmed, and Brooke walked out to the podium. She looked radiant, projecting an image of competence and warmth that I knew was as manufactured as her friendship. "Data is not just numbers," Brooke said into the microphone, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "It is about trust. It is about protecting the people behind the numbers. When a colleague falls, we must step up. We must carry the torch." I felt bile rise in my throat. She was using my collapse as a parable for her own heroism. She looked out into the darkness, finding my face in the back row. She smiled, a sad, benevolent expression that made me want to scream. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, joined her on stage. The CFO followed, holding a tablet that controlled the master access to the Phoenix Project servers due to unforeseen health challenges within our leadership. "Mr. Henderson announced, his voice grave, "We are announcing a strategic restructuring. Brooke Calder will be assuming full administrative control of the client data effective immediately." Brooke turned to look at me again. This time, the benevolence was gone. Her eyes were hard and shining with triumph. It was a look that said, "You are done. Beside me." Grant's phone buzzed violently against the wood of the armrest. He glanced down, annoyed, but then his face went the color of ash. I knew exactly what he was seeing. Dana had triggered the tripwire. The bank had just flagged and blocked a transfer of $50,000 from our joint savings to his shell company. "Lauren," Grant hissed, grabbing my elbow with painful force. "We need to leave. Now." "Shh," I whispered, not moving an inch. "It is the best part," I said now. He tried to yank me up. A shadow fell over us. Marcus Reed stood in the aisle, his arms crossed, blocking Grant's path. "Sit down, Grant," Marcus said, his voice low and pleasant. "You are disrupting the presentation. This is a family emergency," Grant snapped, sweat beading on his forehead. "My wife is—" "Your wife is watching the show," Marcus interrupted. "On stage." The CFO handed the tablet to Brooke. The room was silent. This was the ceremonial passing of the torch. Brooke took the device, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. "Thank you," she said. "To demonstrate our new security protocols, I will now access the live environment of the Phoenix Project." She tapped the screen. The massive projector behind her, which was mirroring her display for the entire company to see, flickered. I held my breath. Brooke tapped the file labeled Master Client Data. She did not use my biometric key. She used the new admin override she had just been gifted. The screen behind her did not show the spreadsheet of consumer data. Instead, it turned a violent, flashing red. A single line of text appeared in bold, black letters that were 10 feet tall. "Unauthorized access logged. Security protocol activated." The sound in the room vanished. It was as if all the air had been sucked out of the auditorium. Brooke stood frozen, her hand still hovering over the tablet, looking small and terrified against the backdrop of her own crime. "What?" She stammered into the hot microphone, her voice screeching through the speakers. This is a glitch." It was not a glitch. It was a confession. Broadcast in high definition. Marcus Reed did not hesitate. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice booming over the confused murmurs of the crowd. He announced that the system had automatically locked down due to a verified security breach. He requested the immediate presence of the IT and compliance teams to verify the logs right there in front of the entire company. Brooke tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled sound. She tapped the screen frantically. "It is just a technical glitch," she stammered, her smile twitching. "The system is... It is just sensitive today." "It is not a glitch," Marcus said, pointing to the massive screen behind her. The log clearly shows the file was accessed using unauthorized administrative privileges granted 2 minutes ago. It matches the timestamp of your login. Brooke. I stood up from my seat in the back row. The sound of my heels clicking against the concrete floor was the only sound in the room as I walked toward the stage. I never handed over the Phoenix Project, I said, my voice calm and carrying to the rafters, and I never sent a resignation letter from my email. I reached into my purse and pulled out the hospital admission record. I held it up. This document shows I was unconscious in the emergency room at St. Jude's at the exact moment my work email sent a request for medical leave. I stated, I was fighting for my life while someone logged into my account from my home IP address to steal my career. The CFO lowered his head. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, looked from me to Brooke, his face hardening into stone. He stepped forward and cut the feed to the projector. This town hall is adjourned, Mr. Henderson barked. Brooke, Grant, Lauren, my office, now. Legal is already on the way. 10 minutes later, we were in the boardroom. The air was thick enough to choke on. Grant was sitting next to Brooke, but he was pulling away from her as if she were radioactive. The door opened, and Dana Klein walked in. She did not knock. She simply slid a stack of documents across the polished table toward Grant. What is this? Grant asked, his voice shaking. That is a temporary restraining order freezing all joint assets due to suspected fraud, Dana explained coldly, and a formal complaint regarding the forgery of my client's signature on medical documents. Grant looked at the papers. He saw his name. His face lost all color. His legs seemed to give out beneath the table. I did not know, Grant whispered. Brooke said she handled the paperwork. Liars, I said softly. I placed my phone on the center of the table and pressed play. The recording from the night before filled the room. Clear and damning. You just sign the damn paper. If you act like this, if you are unstable, the paperwork is actually easier to process if you are not there to fight it. Let Brooke handle it. The silence that followed was absolute. The general counsel for Crestwell Analytics looked at Grant with pure disgust. Brooke stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. She is paranoid. She doctored that recording. Lauren has been mentally unwell for weeks. Marcus Reed tossed a folder onto the table. It slid open, revealing a list of server logs. We traced the anonymous tip regarding Lauren's mental health, Marcus said. It came from a burner email, but the sender forgot to mask their device ID. It matches the phone currently sitting in Grant's pocket, and the history of the emergency contact change. That was done from the same device? The dam broke. He told me to do it, Brooke shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Grant. He said she was going to leave him anyway. He said we needed the money to start the firm. You are the one who wanted her job. Grant yelled back, his composure shattering completely. You told me to get her to sign the power of attorney. You said it was the only way to get the insurance payout without waiting for her to die. They were screaming at each other, tearing their alliance apart with their own hands. The mask of the grieving husband and the supportive best friend dissolved, leaving only two greedy, frightened criminals turning on one another to save their own skins. I did not yell. I did not cry. I reached into my bag one last time and pulled out a white envelope. I placed it gently on the table in front of Grant. What is that? Grant asked. Breathless. Divorce papers, I said, and a no-contact order. You chose a picnic. I chose the truth. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, the CEO was already telling Brooke that her contract was terminated and that she would be hearing from the authorities. I could hear Grant pleading with the lawyers, his voice rising in panic as he realized his accounts were locked and his career was over. I pushed the heavy doors open and stepped out into the hallway. I took a deep breath. My heart monitor was still taped to my chest, but for the first time in a week, my rhythm was perfectly steady. I had lost a husband, but I had won my life back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to hear where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below with your location, and let's share our thoughts together. Please remember to subscribe to the Victoria Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit the hype button to help this story reach even more people.